A pale green or sage-colored fabric fills the frame, appearing to be a curtain or backdrop with vertical folds and pleats. The image is slightly out of focus. A person in a bicorn hat and dark coat with red trim stands with arm extended, facing several people wearing military-style uniforms with spiked helmets. They stand in a grassy outdoor area near water.
Make sure it's secured well, because it's going to be here all day long. We can take up the slack on this end. We've got a fourth one, right? We have a fourth one? Oh, there we go. Do we have a fourth?
Two figures in light-colored clothing stand outdoors on grass, holding a long wooden pole or staff between them. One wears a black bow tie. Green fields and sky are visible in the background.
Whoa.
You're going to have to do three.
Take and move this one over here.
This one. Move this one.
You brought 4 ropes up or did it drop on the way down? You sure you left down? You got 4 ropes in there?
You're right.
A person wearing white pants and dark clothing stands near a wooden railing, looking out at an outdoor area with parked vehicles and green fields in the background under a cloudy sky.
You can do it.
A group of people stands in an open grassy field under a partly cloudy sky. Several wear dark jackets with red trim and tall black feathered headdresses. One person in the center wears a light-colored shirt. Others stand nearby in lighter clothing.
Still good.
Recover! Oh, here, con del cubeo. Hecho de calle, montón de calle, con dos. Hasta calle. El móvil que ya, calle, que no sé, 100 feet, calle, we were fine, like, I'm not down, you know. Daddy got you. They ain't gonna be done with you. You know, you want to come to you. You got to go out here. Yeah. You got to be. Got you to go here. Shake one, shake on. You know. Got to go out here. Some guy out there. You know. I'm about to want to go. You got to go here. There you go. Got to. I'll try to go. There you go. We got the agent, the agent, that's it. We got the light, that's it. That's the eye, but he's going down. Just use the cover, I'm not going down in the deal. He does the outlook and don't see him. Yeah, you get down, you have to keep the agent. We were fine, we found the deal. What condition? Recover.
Five people stand in a grassy field beneath an open-air tent structure. 4 wear beaded vests and robes in cream and brown tones. One person on the left wears darker clothing. Tall poles support the tent canopy against a cloudy sky. Several people wearing tan vests with red trim and dark hats stand in an open grassy field under a cloudy sky. A person in blue stands to the left in the distance.
Cool. 3 cheers to the Omaha Nation. Hip hip. Hurrah! Hip hip. Hurrah! Hip hip. Hurrah! Shoulder your pile up. Secure your pile up.
A person in a blue jacket stands on the left side of an outdoor grassy area. In the background, a tall white structure is visible against a cloudy sky, with green fields stretching across the landscape.
Cool. Facing to the left. Hey! Following us out. All right. Ready? Step. Left. 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 Left.
A large dome-shaped tent shelters a gathering of people inside. Several individuals stand on the ground while others are positioned around the perimeter. Trees and structures are visible in the background beyond the tent. A person in a beaded vest and feathered headpiece stands on the left side of an indoor stage. A large cylindrical structure hangs above. Another person stands on the right. Blue chairs are visible in the foreground.
Okay. Are we going to do that here?
No, we're going to look at the side. invite everyone to come on in and have a seat. We have a little presentation that is going to continue, so please come on in and sit down.
A person wearing a wide-brimmed hat and dark green jacket stands at a microphone holding papers. Behind them is a wooden structure and signage referencing the Department of the Interior and other federal agencies.
My name is Pat Jones, and I'm the Chief of Interpretation for the Lewis Clark National Historic Trail and for the Core Discovery 2 project. I'd like to welcome you this morning here to the Ten of Many Voices. I hope you enjoyed the short ceremony we had here this morning, doing a reenactment of a flag raising that occurred fairly near here over 200 years ago. And you'll hear a little bit more about that historical event here shortly. But we have some presentations that we would like to do and some individuals that I would like to introduce you to. But first of all, I would like to thank the Omaha people for our wonderful visit here. It was way too short. We've only been here for less than a week, though we have been on and off the reservation, meeting with individuals, everything from organizing a wonderful hand game that we had on Sunday evening to planning the events that you've seen over the last couple of days. So the National Park Service is very grateful to the Omaha people for welcoming us into their community and into their homes, and I think we've made a lot of wonderful friends here. I would particularly like to thank Winona St. Cyr, who has been one of our main contacts here and organizing this event, as well as Pierre Merrick, who I don't think is with us this morning, but he is busy getting ready for the Sundance that is coming up, so he's got his hands full, both trying to organize the events here and other things that are going on in the community. So, and what I would like to do now is introduce those of you that don't know him, give an opportunity to make some remarks. The chairman of the Tribal Council for the Omaha Tribe, Donald Grant.
Cool. Okay. Cool. Stand up, please.
I want to thank everybody for being here today, the relatives and our Omaha people. You know, maybe some of them I don't know right off, but that are visiting here from the city. And I apologize for that, for not knowing you. You know, it's always an honor to be treated as well as we have by the Park Service and by getting acquainted with all these soldiers and everything. It was also a real honor to watch what happened here. You know, something that took place as part of our history, you know, over 200 years ago. And I think I can speak for all of the Mohawks that are here. That we're one of the very few tribes that have never been removed from their homeland. This is our original homeland. We've been here over 300 years. So I think that's really says something about how we've survived and how we've succeeded for all these years. And I think
A person in a white short-sleeved shirt and tan pants stands on a stage holding a microphone. Behind them is a dark banner with partial text visible, including Forest Service, Department of Agriculture, and Bureau of India.
The people that have more knowledge of our ancestors and our culture and everything should be up there, and I kind of feel misplaced up here, but I think we have a lot of individuals in here that you could visit and will tell you about not only our spirituality, but our real heritage as it's grown through all these years. And each of these individuals that were presenting up here, singing and everything, are a part of that, and they've carried it on through all these years with their ancestors as well. So I think it speaks well of not only our present day people, but our ancestors. You know, that they had enough time, took enough time to hand all these things down to the family, generation to generation. So I'm really grateful for that. Again, before I close here, I would like to also mention that we're celebrating our 200 years of powwow, and that's going to be through the 26th, August 26th through 29th. So if anybody's in the area, you're more than welcome to come down and see some of our original dances. With that, I'll close, and I'm going to thank everyone, the Park Service, Pat Jones, and all of her staff, Mr. Adams here, and I just recently met, and say a real special thanks for the prayer that was given by one of our elders, Lucas. I'm going to really thank you for that. And and the girl wasn't there for singing. It was really, really nice. And just hearing you down here, the voices of the church. I want to thank you for that. And I think I'll close with that. Thank you.
A person in a white shirt stands at a keyboard on the right side of an indoor space. Two people in military-style uniforms stand near a refrigerator on the left. A blue cloth covers a table in the foreground.
We have been blessed here at the Ten of Many Voices with numerous representatives from the Omaha people who have come and shared their stories with us and with the general public. We've had a significant number of elders of the community who have come down and spent time with us. Peter Merrick, who I mentioned earlier, Joy Howe, have actually traveled to other locations where this exhibit has been. And Rufus White and his wife Maxine were with us when we were down in Omaha, and we have just been very fortunate to have them come and share their stories with us in the Ten of Many Voices. It's a significant part of what this project is all about, is to give a voice to the tribal people during this bicentennial commemoration. And with that, I would like to introduce you now to the superintendent for the Lewis Clark National Historic Trail, Steve Adams.
Thank you, Pat. I would like members of the Park Service staff and the Legacy staff who can come up and join us, if you would come up here now. And Chairman Grant, if you would join us, sir. Chairman Grant and members of the Omaha Nation, I'd like to echo Pat's words. Thank you so much for hosting us and for taking us into your communities as you have. The Bicentennial simply would not be an event worth undertaking without the voices of people from the First Nation. And they want to express our deep gratitude for you allowing us.
A person wearing a light blue uniform shirt and a ranger hat stands at a microphone indoors. Two other uniformed people stand nearby. A banner with geometric designs is visible on the left side of the frame.
Come here and share the results. And with that, I'd like to present the blanket. We're going to turn this over to Captain Lewis.
Three people stand indoors near a doorway and metal railing. The person in the center wears a dark ranger uniform with a campaign hat. The person on the right wears a light blue uniform with a campaign hat. A person on the left holds a beaded vest.
I'm going to go without the microphone. It kills the pictures. They give us enough trouble about having motors on the boat, Steve, let alone microphones. First of all, I'd like to thank Chairman Grant for something that was very important to us. And we're going to have a presentation a little later this morning talking about the Discovery Expedition. But one of the great things that's happened with the Discovery Expedition as we've moved across the country has been the fact that we've been able to help communities from Washington, D.C., all the way to the St. Louis area last year, commemorate not only the bicentennial, but celebrate their own heritage and their own communities along the way. And that's something that's been very important to us, is while we're commemorating Lewis and Clark and this journey that took place 200 years ago, we are excited about the opportunity to celebrate the communities and the people who we encounter along the way. And while this overall bicentennial is a commemoration, and we want to make that distinction, the people along the way need to celebrate their heritage and the pride that they have in their communities and their people. And we are so pleased to continue that tradition as we move into Indian country, and we're very excited about the prospect. That flag that went up this morning
on that pole up there. There are two flags there. One was a pennant flag that was typical of those used by the Corps during this period 200 years ago, and the other is the tribal flag of the Omaha people today. And if you notice, they're flying together up there, and that's significant because 200 years ago, two cultures met. Two distinct and fully realized cultures met one another and came together near this place to find some middle ground and to communicate with one another. And when they came to that meeting, they came as proud and independent peoples on both sides. So those flags are flying up there today together and co-equal, and we're very proud of that. And as you may know, two members of the original expedition were of Omaha extraction, Labiche and Cruzat. And despite the fact that Cruzat would later shoot Captain Lewis in the rear end, we don't hold that against him, and we want to honor both of those members of the expedition. And one of the things that we're proud to do is, as we leave here today, we were very flattered to be presented by the chairman with that flag to fly here today. And when we leave here, that flag will fly on our red pirogue as we move through this traditional homeland of the Omaha people, to both indicate our regard for your people today and recognition of your sovereign nation status, as well as to recognize the heritage of those two individuals who served with distinction on this expedition 200 years ago in service of what would become all of our country one day. And we're so proud to do that. And with that in mind, Chairman Grant, if I could ask you to come up.
A person wearing a dark jacket, white sash, red headpiece, and feathered hat stands at a podium. An American flag is visible to the left. Text listing various government departments appears at the bottom of the frame.
200 years ago, when the Corps came by, much of the cargo they were carrying on the keel boat was intended for use when negotiations with native people. It's important to remember that a lot of times we put this Louisiana Purchase in the perspective of a purchase, that we bought something outright. In fact, what happened was we acquired from France the right to negotiate a relationship with the native nations that existed in this territory. And part of the purpose of this mission was to negotiate those relationships. And regardless of what came afterwards, it is my strong belief, and I know it's the strong belief of the membership of our organization, that that expedition from 1804 through 1806, moving across the interior of this nation, that the expedition under the command of Captains Lewis and Captain Clark was one of peace and friendship, with a promise of hope for the future, of people working together to a common goal. And history has given us all twists and turns, but we are here today as the Discovery Expedition to reiterate the message of the first expedition, one of peace and friendship and a hope for shared commerce and mutual benefit as we move forward into the 21st century and a new day as we help to restore the hoop of trust between our people. Thank you, Chair. With that in mind, I'm going to let Captain Clark present a couple of items that would have been typical on the original expedition, and these are gifts to you, sir, as well as to your people as a whole.
This is a replica of the Jefferson Peace Medal that was carried by the Corps of Discovery. It has an image of President Jefferson on one side and the message of peace and friendship on the other, with the clasped hands and the cross pipe and tomahawk. Chairman Grant, my privilege. Chairman Grant, this is a traditional pipe tomahawk. In peace and friendship, we would like to present pipe tomahawk and traditional bag of tobacco.
A person in a white shirt holds a wooden object while facing another person wearing a dark blue jacket with red and gold trim and a tall feathered headdress. An American flag is visible in the background.
While these items are for you to hold but we want you to know that these are extended to the Omaha people as a whole. But we know how hard that any politician's life is, and that at some point in the day you probably or on the weekend want to go fishing or hunting or get away and do something for your own self. And this is a personal gift for you, sir, that we'd like you to use in good health and enjoy it in whatever endeavor you may decide to use it in. And this is a hunting knife made by actually a friend of our organization who makes these by hand, as is the hawk pipe that you have there. These are made by folks who are involved with our organization as we try to keep the traditional skills of our people alive. And that's becoming increasingly difficult for all of us to keep our traditional skills alive. But this, again, is a personal gift to you, sir, and we hope that you'll use it in good health.
Oh, thank you very much.
A person in a white shirt and medal stands on the left. On the right, a person in a black coat with red and gold trim and a bicorn hat stands near a podium. An American flag is visible in the background.
3 cheers to the Omaha! Hip hip! Hip hip! Hip hip! Privateering! Attention! Ground your call! Post! And last but not least, it's only fitting, since you gave us a flag, that we would give you one. This is the 15-star, 15-stripe flag that flew over the boats of the expedition when they arrived here 200 years ago today. And despite the fact that your people were out hunting, and many of them were gone, and may not have had the opportunity to see that flag 200 years ago, we'd like you to have one now to keep as a gift from us to you all. And we want you to, when you look at this, to think of us, the Discovery Expedition of St. Charles, Missouri, and we want to assure you that you have friends on the trail who are continuing to tell the story of the Omaha people as we move across this country. And we want people to know that your nation is alive and well and prosperous, and each day has a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Two people in 18th century military uniforms stand on a stage. An American flag hangs in the background. Text listing various government departments is visible on the stage backdrop.
I don't talk as loud as white people. Thank you for all the precious gifts you honored us with. I'd like to mention yesterday they had some elders sitting up here and telling their stories about their lives. And I don't think there was one of them that didn't say they were real proud to be Omaha. So that's how I feel right now. I'm very, very proud to be at Omaha. Thank you very much.
A person in a white shirt stands on a stage with another person wearing a dark coat with red and gold trim. Behind them is a wooden structure with an American flag. Text listing government agencies and departments is visible on the stage floor.
As Captain Lewis mentioned, 200 years ago when the Corps of Discovery came to the homelands of Omaha, it was with a message of peace and friendship. And it is that same message that we share today. And with the Discovery Expedition and with all those involved in the Bicentennial, we look forward to 2006 and beyond to look back and talk about what our legacy is, what the legacy is that we left after our adventure, our Corps of Discovery across the nation. And We hope, in fact, at this point, I think we know that it will be a legacy of peace and friendship, and that events like this brought our communities and our nation closer together. And our legacy will be one of coming closer together as a nation, as an American family. And it's an honor to stand here today, and a privilege where my ancestors stood with your ancestors, and to be a part of making that legacy become a reality. Thank you, Chairman. It's an honor to be here.
Two people stand indoors wearing dark clothing with red and white beaded elements at the neckline. One person on the right holds a microphone near their face. A pole is visible between them, and bright light streams through a window in the background.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the National Park Service and the Discovery Expedition St. Charles, well, thank you for coming to our event this morning, and also on behalf of the Omaha Nation. Our next program here in the 10 to Many Voices is going to start very briefly. Captain Lewis, Captain Clark, Scott Mandrell, and Caitlin Clark, Discovery Expedition St. Charles, will be talking a little bit about the journey of the second Corps of Discovery momentarily. And I want to thank you for coming to our opening event this morning, and hope you enjoy the rest of your time here with our Corps of Discovery 2.
A person wearing a tan hat and light jacket stands on the left holding a tablet. Two people in military-style uniforms with red and white regalia stand in conversation on a stage with a dark backdrop displaying text about various U.S. government departments and agencies.
Ladies and gentlemen, please come join us. Our 11 o'clock program is about to begin, and I'd like to thank you all for coming out this morning. We've got a beautiful day, nice little breeze blowing, and we're very happy with the temperatures. We are part of the National Park Traveling Exhibit, the Lewis and Clark Traveling Exhibit, and we are following along in the footsteps of Lewis and Clark and stopping in towns and cities and reservations along the way to talk about the Lewis and Clark story. And when we talk about the Lewis and Clark story, it's not just their story. It's a story of Lewis and Clark, the men that went with them, the woman that accompanied them on this journey, and of all of the peoples they met along the way. So hopefully our 10 of Many Voices is a place where all of these voices can be heard and shared to tell the entire Lewis and Clark story, and the stories of those people who have followed them and crossed this land as well. So welcome to our traveling exhibit. While you're here, take time to go over and visit our exhibit tent. There's a 35-minute audio tour you can do of the exhibit. We have our scale model keelboat and our Plains Indian teepee out in the front. So you can see some of the artifacts that Lewis and Clark would have seen on their journey that were used by the Plains Indians of that time. So today, let's go ahead and get started with our program. And we'd like to thank you for joining us, and we'll have Scott Mandrell and Peyton Bud Clark here to talk about the journey of the Second Corps of Discovery. So I'll turn it over to you all.
Oh, great. Thank you, Mary Ellen. We don't have to hold anything. Great. Well, thank you all. And there's probably most of the people sitting here, a number of people already know about who we are. There's a lot of small crowd, but we want to let you hear the story of our organization. The planning for the Bicentennial has been going on for a long time, I guess by a lot of different people who all across the country who had some different connection to the story or whatever. And some places, in excess of 30 years, people have been anticipating this Bicentennial, which is really the Bicentennial of the West. As many people have referred to it, it's the bicentennial of everything west of the Mississippi River with regard to the United States of America as a nation. And one of the individuals who was keenly interested in taking steps to prepare for the bicentennial was a man by the name of Glenn Bishop. And Glenn Bishop was from St. Charles, Missouri, and he was a contractor and businessman, and among other things, he was an antique boat hobbyist. And he had
A person wearing a dark blue military-style jacket with red and white striped details and a white cross belt stands in front of a gray background. Text at the bottom reads Department and Army.
Built wooden boats in the past and that sort of thing, and had a real love for boats, and particularly old boats, wooden boats, and had built a couple. And living in St. Charles, Missouri, in 1979, I actually had the privilege in 1979, when I was a little kid, of attending the very first Lewis and Clark Heritage Days event that took place there 25 years ago in that town. And from that time on, roughly, there was a deep commitment in the community of St. Charles to tell their story as it related to the overall expedition in this chapter of American history. And one of the things that frustrated Glenn very much was the fact that, despite the fact that in Clark's field notes from Wood River, there had always been available to anyone who wanted to go and look and see, but there was an image of the keelboat that Clark had drawn in his field notes. And yet, everywhere you went across the country, every sign for Lewis and Clark had two guys in coonskin caps in a birch bark canoe paddling up the Missouri River. And this really irritated Glenn. He was a mild-mannered guy, but if there was one thing that was a burr under his saddle blanket, it was this image of two guys in coonskin caps in a birch bark canoe. So he decided that in an attempt to set the record straight, that he would build a model of the original keelboat so that people would have an understanding of what this vessel was like. And you have to remember that 200 years ago, the largest vessel that had ever plied the Missouri River was the keelboat that Lewis and Clark had taken with them. This was a massive boat by comparison to anything else that had been up there. There were 50-foot canoes, but they were dugouts and things like that, and there were large boats, but nothing like this on this order. So he built the model of it, and in 1982 kind of showed it to the world, as it were, and people were very excited. They thought it was neat, and that model still exists, and it's really quite beautiful and all, but it was a 1 inch to 1 foot scale, so even though it was 55 inches long, which is pretty big model, it did not, he felt, communicate in full the scope of what this vessel was like. And particularly, it did not communicate what this boat looked like moving on the water. And if you haven't seen our boats, you should. They really are quite spectacular when they move on the water. And so he decided to actually start constructing a replica of the first boat, based upon field notes from Clark and Wood River, based upon good information from the Maritime Museum, the Smithsonian Institute, and he studied a great deal about boats that were common and typical of that time. The man who built the original boat for Lewis, we believe, is a man by the name of John Walker, and there was a great deal of information about John Walker, who was a boatwright on the Monongahela River. And using this very good research, and having been both a carpenter in his own right as well as a boatwright.
A person wearing a navy jacket with white shoulder boards and red and white striped vest stands speaking in front of a wooden podium with a flag behind them.
He was able to bring a lot of common practical understanding of what was needed to make this boat operational and that sort of thing. So he started working in 1983 on building this boat in his backyard. If you're not aware, boats like this are built upside down. Well, it's a 55-foot long structure that's bowed, and when he was making the frame of it, for the longest time, people thought that he was building this wooden greenhouse in his backyard. And he was kind of the object of ridicule in his neighborhood. People would kind of laugh at him and thought he was kind of this eccentric, kind of crazy old guy. And then one day, as the planks went on and it started to look like a boat, and he flipped it over, then people really started kind of giving him a hard time and kind of poking fun at him, because Glenn had a big white beard, and they used to sort of make Noah jokes, and laugh at him. And, this old guy thought he was Noah building this ark. That was in the mid-'80s, late and early '90s. Then in 1993, we got the Great Flood, and everybody stopped laughing. And at any rate, in '96, the boat was finally finished, and we took a 1,000-mile trip from Wood River, Illinois, to St. Joe, Missouri, and back to St. Charles. It took us 7 weeks. And it had started out, it was only going to be a trip from Wood River up to St. Charles for the Bicentennial, or for the Heritage Days event. And it kind of grew and grew and grew. Before you know it, was 7 weeks and 1,000 miles. And it changed many of our lives, fundamentally, those of us who were involved with the project, because we started to see not only the possibilities with regard to the Bicentennial, but we started to have a much deeper understanding of the Missouri River corridor and what it represented to us as a nation, environmentally, historically, spiritually, even, as this great river coursed through the interior of our nation and all the things that connotated to us as a society. The Missouri River is more than simply a river. It is an idea in many ways. And it became a passion for many of us, and we had started to plan on what we would do the next year. And indeed, we started working over the winter on the White Pirogue, the first of the two smaller boats. And we had that boat all framed out. And the last day I worked on that boat was the 30th of January of 1997. And on the 31st of January of 1997, Glenn and another fellow, C.J. Lanahan, who's been instrumental in our group over the years, they did some finishing touches, some touch-up work on the keel boat, because that next week we were going to move the keel boat down to the Trans World Dome down where the Rams play football for a big boat show. It was going to be a display item there of all the boats around it. And they were doing a little touch-up on it on the 31st of January. And they left the warehouse that night about 5 o'clock.
A person wearing a dark blue jacket with red and white striped trim and a white cross belt stands on a stage, gesturing while speaking. An American flag is visible in the background behind them.
I got home at about 5:20, the phone rang, and it was the fire department. The warehouse had caught on fire, and the boat that had taken him 13 years to build with his own hands by himself, in about 40 minutes was reduced to ashes. It was a terrible, terrible thing. It was a devastating experience for all of us. And I remember the next morning standing in the still smoldering embers of that boat, completely forlorn, with a tremendous sense of loss, because this boat had come to sort of represent what might be. And when I asked Glenn, what are we going to do? His response was, I was never completely happy with that boat anyway. And that was the day, and I've said this many times before, but that was the day that I truly understood the meaning of undaunted courage. If a man could spend 13 years of his life by himself, his own money, building this thing that he only wanted to give as a gift to the American people by building it, if he could experience this tremendous loss and go forward without any hesitation, that was the kind of character in a man that I had tremendous respect for. And I swore my allegiance to him that day, quite literally. And from that day on, our organization actually grew. It's sort of like sometimes when you cut a tree back or prune a tree back, it grows more hardy and healthy. And that's what happened with our organization. And in 1997, countless members of our greater St. Louis, St. Charles community came forward, retired individuals, men who had carpentry skills or some other skill. And we immediately started working on the fleet of boats, because our dream had grown by that time to build the whole fleet of boats. And we knew that we couldn't get the keel boat done in 1 year, so we started working on the White Pirogue, because we knew that as important as the boats were, just like the original expedition, the most important thing on the trip was the men. And it was important to train a crew. And if we had to wait until the keel boat was done, we would lose valuable and precious time training crews. So in 1997, we completed in 6 months the White Pirogue. And that year, we took that boat from down the Mississippi, from St. Louis down and up the Ohio to Fort Massac on the Ohio. And then in 1998, we built the Red boat in about 8 months. And in that year, we took the White and Red Pirogue together from Yankton, South Dakota, back down to St. Charles. Passed by here that first time in 1998. In 1999, we began work on the keel boat, the second keel boat. And now there were many hands to make the labor light, and the work went much faster. And in addition to working on the keel boat, we took the two pirogues in 1999 from Louisville, Kentucky down to Fort Massac on the Ohio River. And then in 2000, we took the two pirogues, continued work on the keel boat, and took the two pirogues to Elizabeth, Pennsylvania. We brought them down the Monongahela to the Ohio, and down the Ohio to Louisville. And then in 2001, the keel boat was finished, and we took it up to Pierre, South Dakota, and brought it back to Yankton. So by 2001, we had trained on the entire water route from Elizabeth, Pennsylvania, where it began, all the way to Pierre, South Dakota, below Omaha Dam. And that was a tremendous amount of training. We had a very qualified crew by that time. In 2002, we were very worried. It was only a year away from the bicentennial, and we were very concerned about putting our boats in the water and having an accident, and then not having time to have them rebuilt for the bicentennial. But we wanted to continue to train crews, so we took 30 men in 5 dugouts. 5 dugouts, not dugout canoes, no such thing. A dugout is a dugout is a dugout. It's a log. And we took 5 big logs and 30 men from Beacon Rock to the ocean, to the mouth of the Columbia River, 140 miles, to continue to train those crews. And so we were ready. The bicentennial was about to begin, and then it kind of dawned on me that Lewis hadn't rented a car from Hertz and ran out to Pittsburgh to get the boat, and he had to get there some other way. And part of this story is about understanding how vast a nation we are, how big a nation we are, and how difficult things were for all of our forefathers as they moved across this great continent. And I realized that in order for the story to be complete, Lewis had to get to Pittsburgh. And so last year on the 5th of July, I mounted a horse in Washington, D.C. and rode to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The Corps gathered in Elizabeth, Pennsylvania in August, and in August we departed Elizabeth, Pennsylvania. We came down the Monongahela River to the Ohio, down the Ohio River to Cairo, Illinois, up the Mississippi to our winter camp at Wood River, arriving there on December 12th, just as the original Corps had done, day for day, mile for mile. And then we spent the winter at Camp Dubois, and that fellow who had been helping Glenn years before, C.J. Lanahan, he had dedicated the last 3 years of his life to building a replica of Camp Dubois in Wood River, Illinois, a working, functioning Camp Dubois that would allow us to train there over the winter and learn the skills necessary for what we were embarking on. And over the winter, we brought men from our organization, now up to 250 members strong from 36 different states. And we brought them there over the winter. And we trained there, and we learned infantry skills from the time, and that sort of thing. We participated in the 3 flag ceremony, which changed the sovereign flags that flew over St. Louis 200 years ago in March when Spain and France relinquished their claims to Louisiana. And then in May, we put the boats in the water on the 7th of May, and on the 14th of May, the same date and the same hour of the original expedition, once again we were underway and we entered the mouth of the Missouri River. And we've ascended the Missouri River now 691 miles on a journey that this year will take us 1,350 miles to Washburn, North Dakota and Fort Mandan. And we will complete those miles in the same time frame that the original expedition did. It is a tremendous honor for us to share this story with America. But as we talked about today, this story is about much more than simply 2 individuals, Lewis and Clark. And for a long time, that's been the way we refer to this story as Lewis and Clark. But Lewis and Clark is like an icon on the desktop of your computer that you never clicked on. You know, it came with all that preloaded software that you never used. And one day you clicked on that icon and all those great applications were in there and you thought, wow, if I'd known this was here earlier, I would have used it. That's what Lewis and Clark is like. And while it's important to tell the story of the many tribes along the way, before we even get to the tribes, last year one of the big things we had to talk about was the many tribes that comprised the Corps itself. In 1803, this nation was not a homogeneous nation. It wasn't a bunch of people who got up in the morning and thought of themselves as Americans. There's people who got up in the morning and thought of themselves as Virginians and Pennsylvanians and New Englanders and Kentuckians and Tennesseans. And they thought about themselves in a very colloquial way. Yeah, they had joined together to fight the British and gain independence and autonomy from the British Crown. But a Virginian was a Virginian, and a Pennsylvanian was a Pennsylvanian, and there the two would meet. Unless maybe in the case of the Whiskey Rebellion, and when they met there, they were on opposite sides. This story is about the moment when those eastern states started to understand that they were part of something bigger. And the men who comprised the Corps of Discovery were not one group of people. They were Scots and Irish and Germans and Welsh and French. And it was an eclectic group of individuals to begin with. Some, like Lewis and Clark, from the upper class gentry, aristocracy, as it were. some from the very lowest levels of society, poor dirt farmers from Appalachia, people who knew that this expedition and being on it would change their lives fundamentally. If they could go on this trip and come back, that they would reap rewards that would change their lives and the families' lives, that would give them a chance to have a fresh start in the world, a chance to have a leg up, upward mobility. And it was very important for that group of individuals. But they were not a common group of individuals, and there was a tremendous amount of angst between them, which at Wood River we see played out. It was very difficult for the captains to bring discipline and order to this group of unruly individuals. But they finally did. But then Lewis and Clark even complicated matters further, because they went to St. Charles and they recruited all of these French boatmen to help make the trip possible. Another chapter in the story of America, a melting pot, its strength is in its diversity. Lewis and Clark bring into the story Frenchmen who are not only French and speak a different language, but are Catholic, which is a very complex issue in the late 18th and early 19th century. And we see the eclecticism and the diversity of this group of people growing day by day as these people join the crew. And then ultimately, as they make their way across the nation, so many times, over and over and over again, the turning point in success or failure pivots on the assistance that they are given freely and hospitably by the native nations that they encounter along the way. And that is the message and the model that this bicentennial continues to offer us, and that we must embrace and share across the nation, is that the story of this Corps of Discovery 200 years ago is a story that reflects the character of America today. It is eclectic, multicultural, and diverse. And that was its strength then, and it is the strength of our nation today. It is a great honor for us to be able to bring this story to life. It's a great honor to be here with you today. I'm going to stop talking and let Bud say a few words. Bud, as you know, is the great-great-great-grandson of William Clark. We have several descendants with us today, and it's a special honor for us to get to serve with them as we move across the country in this exercise. But it's also magical to be at places where we get to stand next to descendants of the original expedition, once again grasping hands with descendants of those native people who met them for the first time 200 years ago, and see evidence that once again there is an opportunity for the promise of Thomas Jefferson to come true, that one day we can live in peace and friendship together. And this hopefully is the beginning of that age. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. As Scott mentioned, we do have some other descendants here today. Bob, if you would stand, please. Bob Anderson, who is a collateral descendant of George Shannon, and his grandson Josh Loftus. Josh is the youngest member of our organization, making the entire trip, as George Shannon was the youngest member of the original expedition. Also, my cousin Churchill is here in the back. Churchill is part of our organization, planning to make the entire trip. I think that very early on, as students of Lewis and Clark, one of the first things we recognize is that perhaps the title Lewis and Clark Expedition is sort of a misnomer. I think if I could change any of the written words that my ancestor wrote, I would change that title and give it a name, something like the Corps of Discovery's Journey Through the Lands of the Native Americans, because in fact that is exactly what it was. And one of the things that makes this event today so significant and so important, and why we feel so honored to be here, is that, quite frankly, without the help, without the hospitality and the assistance of the Native Americans, there's a very good chance that I wouldn't be standing here. We can say with absolute certainty that the Lewis and Clark expedition would not have succeeded. How dismal that failure might have been, well, we'll never know, because they had the assistance of the Native Americans, and it did succeed. And as we proceed across the country and travel through the homelands of the Native Americans, we hope that they'll be many more like days like this one, where we can really enjoy coming together as a nation. And as we mentioned earlier this morning, that is what we want our legacy to be. It's quite straightforward. It's really quite simple. When this is all over, we want to stand tall and say, we were a part of bringing this nation closer together as a family. And we can see that happening on days like today. And it's magic. It's really magic. I think, Scott, did you want to like to entertain questions now? Or?
I think that's probably best because, why don't we do that? We'd like to answer questions either about the original expedition, if we can, if you have interest in something that happened on the original expedition, something about our expedition, something about the boats.
Just raise your hand, we'll bring the microphone.
If you have questions, wave to us. Angela's on that side, I'm on this side, and we'll be glad to entertain those questions for you.
Good question. Maybe I shouldn't say, do you plan to do this, but will you do this? Will you write a book? Are you keeping journals as the original Lewis and Clark did and write a book to compare what they went through as compared to what you are going through?
My journals are online at lewisandclark.net. They are, in fact, I've been writing journals for this organization for many, many years. Our previous training exercises were brief, so those journals are shorter. But I have journaled since last year, since I left Washington, D.C. last year. That's a journal that probably might be a good historical document to compare what happened on a daily basis. As far as books go, I don't know. On the 23rd of September 2006, I'm probably going to put on jeans and a sweatshirt and try to think about something else, at least for a little while. I know some of the guys are planning on writing books. One of the guys actually last night told me that he's got a title for his book. They're all writing books. They're all talking to agents and publishers all the time. But one of the guys last night told me, and Sergeant Pryor will appreciate this one, one of the titles that I heard last night that one of the guys is working on is Sweet Corn and Anarchy on the Missouri River. Yes, I'm sure there'll be a book out of it. I don't know whether the market can bear too many more, though. Can't throw a stick without hitting a new book on Lewis and Clark.
I'm trying to keep a journal. I have to tell you, I have a newfound admiration for the members of the Corps of Discovery and their diligence in terms of keeping journals, men like Ordway and Whitehouse and my ancestor. I don't know how, after those long, tiring days, those physically taxing days that were so much more strenuous and taxing than anything that we experience, I get falling down tired doing what we do, and it's nothing in comparison. And I find myself thinking that I should be catching up on my journals, and it doesn't always happen. In terms of publishing something later, I can tell you this, I did inherit one trait from my ancestor, and that is the ability to spell extremely creatively. In fact, I have the talent and the ability to even stump spell check and get that sort of sinking sensation when I see that message, no suggestion. So I'm probably more of a nuts and bolts guy than an author, but I am trying to keep a journal. My kids bug me about it. You got to do it for your grandkids, and they lay the guilt trip on me. Then I can't sleep at night because I know I should be up working on my journals by candlelight. But anyway.
Lewis, are you related to the actual Lewis that went on the expedition?
No, Meriwether Lewis did not have any legitimate heirs. Now, he did have collateral descendants, but he did not have a direct descendant. However, we do believe that he may have a direct descendant, although not recognized through a formal marriage or anything, but he may have had a child with the Lower Brulee woman when they passed through the Brulee Sioux in late September of 1804, that he may have had a child in the spring of 05 with her, and there's some speculation about that. I am not a descendant of Meriwether Lewis. However, curiously enough, when I was in active duty in the Army, I am an Army soldier, and when I was on active duty service, I'm in the Guard now, and the unit that I served with when I was active duty was the unit that evolved out of the very same unit that Meriwether Lewis served with.
Some other questions? All right, let's give them all a big hand. Thank you very much. It's our pleasure to have the Discovery Expedition of St. Charles with us and to have Scott and Bud with us to talk about the Discovery Expedition. Thank you both so much, and thank you all for coming as well. We have another program scheduled at 12 o'clock.